Okay, here we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first ever shiur on Chayei Moharan. This is very, very exciting. I should say, Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'gianu l'zman hazeh. This has been a long time that I've been preparing. It's something I've wanted to do for a while, and I'm glad we're finally getting to this first year. So looking forward to getting started. Um, Before we begin, I just want to say that these shiurim are in the memory of my maternal grandparents, Menachem ben Dovid Zvi and Illana Basara. Also in these shiurim, we can't help but not think of the hostages, that they should all be coming home safely, and a refuah shalema to all those who need it. And today also is Holocaust Remembrance Day, so we want to think of all those kedoshim who perished in the Shoah. May their neshamas have the highest and the aliyahs when they're sitting right by the chair, the kiseh kavod. So definitely going to be thinking about them too. So with that, let's begin. So we're truly blessed here to set on this very exciting journey through Chayei Moharan. We're going to uncover the life and teachings of Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. So a little bit about Chayei Moharan. It's a very foundational text which details the life and the teachings of Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, also known as the Nachal Nevea Mekar Chachma, which is an acronym for the name Nachman. We're going to reference this sefer here. This is by the Breslov Research Institute. This is Tzaddik. This is an English translation of the sefer, and if you're watching on YouTube, there'll be a link in the description for this sefer along with the Hebrew sefer that we're going to be looking through as well. I will show you that. That's what this looks like here, Chayei Moharan. So there'll be links in the description on YouTube for you to be able to purchase the sefer for yourself if you wish to follow along. So the structure of the English version is actually very interesting. The sefer in total is split up into different sections, short paragraphs. Also in Hebrew, usually when referring to Likutei Moharan, which is Rebbe Nachman's main work, which Reb Nosson, which we're going to learn about who these highly holy individuals are. But the sefer is divided up into different paragraphs, which actually, very interestingly, they all add up to 613, which is absolutely no coincidence at all, but definitely something very true and very, very fascinating. But the way that the English version is structured is that it actually begins with the biographical sections first, and then after that, it goes to a different part of the sefer, which talks about the backstory of what was going on during the teachings of Rebbe Nachman, what was happening historically at the time. So those actually go at the end, unlike the original sefer, which talks about the backstory of the teachings and then goes to some of the biographical sections. So for this year, I'm actually going to follow the structure of the Breslov Research Institute. For me, I think it's very helpful, and I guess for everybody listening here, this is why we're doing this. It'd be very helpful to learn a bit of the backstory, a little bit of the biography of Rebbe Nachman before we dive into some of the backstory of his teachings. So when it comes also to the teachings of Rebbe Nachman himself, and we touch on little ideas from Likutei Moharan, I'll also try to bring up as short a summary as I can without diving too much in the teachings, because that would be for a whole other shiur, which you can also find on our YouTube channel. But this is how I decided that I think it would be best to structure these shiurim. So, a little bit of the context of what Chayei Moharan is, a little bit of its context of the sefer. So, firstly, for those who do plan on purchasing the sefer, I highly recommend reading the two introductions that Reb Chaim Kramer and Rav Avram Greenbaum, who are two very highly influential mashbiim in Breslov, have written their own introduction to the sefer. I felt that it wasn't something that I was going to delve into in these shiurim. Maybe I'll touch on some ideas as they come up. But I'd actually be diving into Reb Nosson's own introduction. So for a little bit of context, who is Reb Nosson? Who wrote the sefer? What is Chayei Moharan before we dive straight in? So Reb Nosson, he was the primary student of Rebbe Nachman. He lived from 1780 until 1844, and he was a pivotal role within Breslev, who wrote down all Rebbe Nachman's teachings. We're going to see this analogy, this metaphor given all the time within this sefer, that there's Moshe Rabbeinu and then there's Yeshua. And Moshe Rabbeinu represents the leader, and Yeshua represents the prime student, the one taking over the mantle, the one who helped to be able to carry all the instructions and the teachings on from the main leader. So where you see this, that Rebbe Nachman represents this idea of Moshe Rabbeinu, Reb Nosson represents this idea of being Yeshua. So Reb Nosson, being the prize student, he took all Rebbe Nachman's writings, Likutei Moharan, Sichas Moharan, which were other talks given by Rebbe Nachman, usually less formal than Likutei Moharan, but these are all written down and recorded by Reb Nosson, showed to Rebbe Nachman, and then Rabbeinu then commented on what should be changed or edited, and then that was then put to final works. And Reb Nosson, it was even very influential in also having the first printing of many of these sefarim. So Reb Nosson himself, though, was also a very avid writer. He himself, by the Rebbe's instruction, wrote down Likutei Halachos, Shemus HaTzaddikim, many sefarim. And one of the things he compiled was the sefer on Chayei Moharan, which talks about the life of Rebbe Nachman, and his life and his teachings. So, why is the sefer called Chayei? Very simply, it has to do with life. This is all about the life of the Rebbe. This all has to do with talking about how each day striving to be better, to achieve a good life. And this is some of the many instructions that are given in the sefer, without spoiling everything, because we're gonna dive straight in, and it's gonna be fantastic and quite the journey. But we're gonna see some visions. We're gonna hear about dreams, different descriptions of events that were involved in Rebbe Nachman's life, and that's gonna be in part 1. Part 2 will be a lot of the different conversations that Rebbe Nachman had with highly influential tzaddikim at the time, with his chassidim, related to different topics that he also taught, and the historical context, like we mentioned before. There's also a third section which talks more about different episodes in the Rebbe's life, and also different sayings and conversations. So we'll see that there. Okay, before we dive in, there's one more thing that I wanted to take care of. Little housekeeping. This is something that Reb Chaim Kramer and Reb Greenbaum touch on. But when studying the lives of great tzaddikim like the Baal Shem Tov and Rebbe Nachman, every word must be taken with utmost sincerity. There's no room for skepticism, and every story, every detail in this sefer as well, it's filled with absolute truth, and we need to absorb these lessons and approach them as though we are eyewitnesses, chassidim involved in these events as they were taking place. So Reb Nosson, he wrote Chayei Moharan with deep reverence, deep awe, deep respect for his Rebbe Reb Nachman. And the words here are not exaggerated. They're not fantastical. They're all trying to capture the true essence of who Rebbe Nachman really is. And we're going to see Reb Nosson talks about how, for him, that's even difficult to do. And it's difficult to not say it. And it's difficult to also write everything, because how can you take such a tzaddik and compress all that a tzaddik is, including all of his essence, into a sefer? It's something we're going to see Rebbe Nosson he said it was a challenge to do, but we'll touch on that soon. So our job is to engage with these words as truly, hopefully, as we really can, without the lens of like our modern doubt. I think with a modern perspective, which can be healthy, very, very true. But I think it's important when learning the sefer to remove that lens and dive in as if you were there at the time, and accept these profound truths as we see them. Okay, with that, there's one more thing that I wanted to read, and I think it's going to very, very much help us on this journey. I know we're all probably we're itching to get started, but there's one more thing that I feel is very, very important that's going to help us understand what we're about to embark on, and it's going to be a journey. This is from a sefer called Open Gates. It's from Reb Nosson Dovid Kivak. It's a beautiful sefer. I learned it a lot over Yomim Noraim, but there was one section that really stood out to me, and it was touching on the Rebbe's Yortzeit, which takes place on Chol Hamoed Sukkos. And there was one thing here that when I was preparing for the shiur, that I thought of it, and I was like, you know what, this is something really important to share. I feel it's very relevant for us before we get started. So I'm just going to read this here for everybody. Reb Nachman said, I won, and I will always win. Nitzachti v'anatzeach, gamarti ve'egmar. I completed, and I will continue to complete. His victory comes through bringing Jews who are far away from Kedusha back to Hashem, and he was already victorious during his lifetime beyond what we can measure. But Rabbi Nachman didn't just say, I won, nitzachti, referring to what he did while he was alive. He also said, and I will win, since his victory continues even after his passing. And just to go outside the sefer for a second, we see this even now with the massive influence that Breslev has over the world, thanks to all the influential mashpiyim and the access to English sefarim of Breslev. We really see this taking place now in our life. Without any doubt, he will take us out of our frozen, lifeless state that is void of any ratzon and inspire us to yearn to serve Hashem. The greatest compassion that he has on us is that he gives us a higher awareness of Hashem and awakens a ratzon in our hearts. Even though his awareness is something that every Jew is given, since it is the essence of our souls, which separates us from all other animals very often, our awareness is damaged by foreign thoughts, worries, and depression to the point that's hard for us to hold on to our yearning for Kedusha and our simple Amunah. So what is the key? The key is to connect to the Tzaddik. And that is one of the main things that we're going to be doing as we're learning Chayei Moharan. We're going to be connecting to the life, to the teachings of this very holy Tzaddik through learning about his light, through learning about his sayings, his dreams, his visions, through the immense work that Reb Nosson did to try and capture his life. So with that, let's get started. So we're going to be in the introduction to the sefer. This was written by Reb Nosson himself. Reb Nosson we were going to see he has a very beautiful, elegant way of writing and even tying in psukim to some of his writing. If you want to see more of this, there's a sefer called Alin L'Trufa, which is a compilation of all these letters that Reb Nosson wrote to his sons and to some of his students as well. So with that, let's get started. Okay. Mi yamalo gvuras Hashem yashmiya kol tehilosai. Who can express the mighty acts of Hashem and make heard all his praise? Mi yuchal lesaper, who can tell over? Mi yuchal leshayer as kol hagadoles vaniflois vahanerois asher asa adinenu borenu v'rabenu. Who can tell over and provide an estimate as to all the great, wondrous, amazing things that our master, our teacher, our Rebbe, Or ha'oros, light of lights, or ha'nitzachtzakos, radiance of radiances, or ha'ganos, betzafon, betamun, treasured and hidden light, in klal nefashes Yisrael, shebehem teluyim kol ha'olamais, along with all of the hidden side of Yisrael that all the worlds are included and dependent on, which includes all the other tzaddikim as well in this. And furthermore, asher Paul ba'asa imanashov hamakroivim elav, all the Rebbe's accomplishments for those who were close to him, asher zachu leistoifer betziloi, which they merited to be able to take refuge in his shade. Seil HaKadosh, his holy shade. V'lishmoya mipiv mashashomei devarim shekisa atik yomin, and to be able to hear from his mouth these holy words that were concealed since the ancient days. Atik yomin is a term in Zohar and Kabbalah tied up within the spheres. Here is just referring to ancient days. Over Pratios, and especially Asher Paul va'asa imi ha'ani ve'evyoin. Now, we're going to see Reb Nosson, the humility with which he talks about himself, that he's referring to here, that the Rebbe worked on him and his humble self. So Asher Hikimani may offer me ashbois, that the Rebbe raised him up from dust and ashes, Shivani Etzli, and brought me to him. But maybe another time we can talk about the amazing story about Reb Nosson and how the Rebbe brought him to him. There was, just for short context, there was a dream that Reb Nosson had, and he was at the time he knew Chassidus was something that he connected to, even coming from more of a Misnandisha family, and he felt very connected to Chassidus and went to Rebbe Yitzchak Berditchev, and for him, for some reason, that was not a place that he felt connected to, even though he felt close to Rebbe Yitzchak. And one day he had this dream where there was this ladder going up, and each time he tried to climb the ladder, and he climbed and climbed and climbed, and then he'd fall, and then he'd try again, and he'd climb and he'd fall, and then he'd climb and he'd fall. If I'm remembering correctly, because it's all off the top of my head, there was someone there catching him that said, as he was falling down, and said, "Hold on, and I have you." And a few years later, when he came to Rebbe Nachman, he recognized this was the Tzaddik that held on to him as he was trying to climb the ladder, and that really was very profound, and that's what got him and stuck him with Rebbe Nachman. Verkervani Barachman B'Yoser, and he was closer than anyone, and we're going to learn more about this. The Samach Yodoi al Alai Lekabel V'Lichtoiv Es Kol Divrei Soroiso V'Sichoiso V'Sipuri B'Masiov, and the Rebbe asked me, and he gave me the responsibility to be able to write all his Torahs and his teachings and his stories. Hakol kasher lakol zikani shiyeh nifta b'el. He accorded me with the responsibility that all should be written by me. But Amar b'peh maleh, and I said this very openly. This is referring to Reb Nosson himself. She'ein mi yodea mimenu ki im anochi ma'at. Sorry, I got that wrong. This is referring to Rebbe Nachman said this, that there's no one who knows of me even just a little bit like Reb Nosson knows, and he spoke about this in different ways several times. V'emes nashi adas moed, and it's truth we know very well. Mashi efshel lasaper klal, what can't be said. O kvar kasafti harbe, and I've already written on this a lot. V'siparti lechaveri b'salmidei b'peh harbe moed, and I've shared orally with my friends and my students, Baruch Hashem, Devarei asu roishem b'koicha agadol, and that which I've been able to share has had a tremendous impact and has made a impression on the people that have shared these teachings and these ideas from Rebbe Nachman. Shenichnas b'liba me'emes ke'esha be'eretz, and they entered into their heart with truth like a burning fire. This is one of the places where we get our name. Here we're in Breslev burns a fire. This is Esha Be'eretz. This is one of the places where our name has a source. V'nisoyeru harbe l'Hashem yisborach, and they've awakened and aroused, shaken up people to be able to serve Hashem. V'kama kvar nistalku b'kedusha b'Torah b'nifru b'shem toiv mitoch divrei Torah u'tefila b'emunah shlema chalkum b'chayim. And some of these people, unfortunately, they've already passed away, but were in a state of holiness and purity, and they passed away amidst the name of Hashem, and with Torah and Tefillah and faith, complete faith. Banisharim la'erach yamim shanim, and those who remain should be with long, happy days, healthy days. Hinem chazakim, they should be with strength, be'ezus Hashem. Be'emes be'emunah kiri mutzak, with truth and with faith. I love this saying. This is one of the places where Reb Nosson's knowledge of Tanakh is so sweet and beautiful. Then he ties it in with all of his writings, and he says, Kiri Mutzak, like a strong, like a molten mare. This is from Eoiv. The beautiful, beautiful phrase. Bal Yamoy to the Oilam, they should never be removed. Okay. V'im kol zeh yadati benafshi, with all this I know in my heart. Kihaim Gamhaim Adayin Srikin Lamai Aidai Rabba. There's still so much to know about this holy tzaddik. Vadayin Ein Am Yoidim Or Amita Seemes La Amitoi Beshlemes Karoi. And still they don't, it's very hard to be able to radiate the truth. Here, it's very this is a very interesting phrase. To radiate the truth that is not yet fixed. And for context, I just want to see what the translation here is very, very nice. And yet, it says here, yet for all this, I know in my heart that there's still much for them to learn. The radiant truth is not yet fixed in their hearts as strongly as it is in mine. And this gives us a bit of a hint as to how much Reb Nosson knew about the Rebbe and how much he wanted to give this over to other people. And we'll continue here also in English because we're about to touch on an idea from the Sanhedrin. It says here, in the words of our sages of Blessed Mary, much have I learned from my teachers, yet I skimmed of their knowledge no more than a dog that laps at the ocean. And my pupils had skimmed of my knowledge no more than a makeup brush picks up one insertion in the tube of color. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. This praise from the Gemara and Sanhedrin, from our holy Chachamim. This kind of touches on what we say about Torah itself, that there's it's like the ocean, and Torah is given that analogy as being the water, and just even if we dive like a couple meters, there's still so much to go down. You could go all the way down the Marianas Trench and more, and still have so much to discover about the holiness of a Torah. And this is what Reb Nosson's touching on, about how difficult it is to even try and touch on a minute amount of who the Rebbe really was, and to capture it down on paper, even for that is a struggle. But this is what he's going to do to the best of his ability to be able to and try give us a small picture of who this great tzaddik was. So ma daber, what can be said? Kikol devarai eled noigim b'dias neimois hanisnoitzisus elokus belev. All this touches on the knowledge of the pleasant radiance of the holy, godly heart. Asher hu lakol chad kifum ma demishar belibai. Each person can understand it only according to his heart's capacity. The hein gevuraisav, and referring to the Rebbe's accomplishments, hein noirasav, and according to his awesome accomplishments. Asher yagav atarach ba'vedasa yisbarach kol kach, that he struggled and he toiled, even in his own personal avodah, until the Rebbe got to the stage that he got towards the end of his life. Which draw on very deep seichel, deep waters, counsel in the heart of man, exceedingly deep, who can find out? These are from Mishlei and from Koheles. Ad asher bechachmasai haniskiva v'koichai atzum heir betuvai belev hapachais, until he reached the exalted wisdom and this great light that is not seen in many people. And with this exalted wisdom and towering strength, he was able to radiate even to the heart of the most broken people a quite amazing illumination of the godliness that the Rebbe had. Bahu zechorna lebracha laslik b'ksivas nerais eskalis Torah kedosha. And the Rebbe himself was busy in these holy, great writings of his holy Torahs that he taught. B'Hashem Yisborach chizkani lichtayv tamid ha'inyanim ba'asichois shahayu etzel ha'Torah. And Hashem has given me the strength to be able to write these down, these ideas and these conversations and these teachings constantly. I was writing these down, and each one has like tremendous depth to them. Kiyadanti shekol dibur v'dibur hu Torah shlema, and know that each one of the Rebbe's teachings is a Torah unto itself. So we're going to continue next week, but this is a good place for us to stop for now. there's a little bit more to go in the Hakdama, in the introduction by Reb Nosson. So we're going to go through that. And once we go through that, which is going to take a couple shiurim, we'll dive in straight to the sefer itself. So I want to thank you, everybody, for joining. This is our first Chayei Moharan shiur. Really, really appreciate it. It's very exciting to do this live and also to do this on YouTube. So if you have an Instagram account, feel free to join us every Monday, 7:30 Eastern time, and on YouTube, where these recordings will be posted. If you're looking on Instagram, we're at breslev Burns of Fire. It's the same title as our channel. Feel free to check the link in our bio for all links in Breslev Burns of Fire. And if you'd like to contribute to those shiurim as well, there's a link in there too. So thank you so much, everybody. Wishing you a fantastic week.